Hey guys, welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. If you watched part 1 of my Europe tour video, you know that the video was getting quite long, so I went ahead and when editing, stopped the video after we finished our Paris tour, and today we'll pick up and tell you what we did in Switzerland and Germany. The next step on our trip was to travel to Switzerland. So we took an above ground high-speed rail from Paris to a town called Basel in Switzerland. And at that point, we got off to board the bus that we were going to be using for the duration of our trip. The train station in Basel was beautiful, beautiful. They had this huge flower market right there inside the train station with all of these gorgeous bouquets you could buy. And I was really tempted to buy flowers just for the heck of it, even though I had nowhere to keep them and they were going to die on the duration of the trip. But it was just so stunning. But we got on the bus and then we traveled from there to Zurich and got to spend an afternoon in Zurich. So Zurich is right on a body of water and it's just the most crystal clear blue water. It's just perfectly clean. Now I'm from Indiana, and if you're from Indiana, you know our rivers leave a lot to be desired. They're pretty much brown, and browner, right? They're just not pretty rivers. Oh, it was gorgeous. It was so gorgeous. And they have docks and tons of boats. And again, spots where you can walk down to the water. You can put your feet in the water. There were swans swimming around and little ducks. We ate at a cute little lunch stop right there on the water. And then they had this big kind of open air market going on. And it was almost like a massive garage sale. Like there are a whole bunch of different people with different tables and tents set up selling all kinds of wares. I mean, clothes and antiques and books, toys, shoes, just all kinds of random stuff. And that was probably like the one time when I actually needed to have cash on me, was because most of the people there weren't taking card. They were only taking cash. But we did kind of look around at some of the different shops. And then our tour guide did take us on a foot tour of Zurich, teaching us about the history. We went to this really cool, it's an older church, or originally was a church, and you can go down to where the original foundations of the first church that was there were. Like they've got blocks of stones, and it identifies like which part of this foundation was from different eras, you know, because the church had been built and then rebuilt and all of that over the years. There's a really interesting history there about 2 martyrs who were said to have been killed at that site. And we kind of heard the information about them. And then we walked through some of the older parts of the city, just kind of learning some interesting facts there. And that's where having a tour guide was really helpful, because, you know, we would have walked it and enjoyed the sights, but it was finding out the history behind things. Like, why is this building important? Like, what happened here? Or information about, like, there was like a building that used to be a convent, and they talked about the types of daughters of aristocrats who would be sent there and how that all worked. Like, we were finding out some really just fascinating facts along the way. So Zurich is a beautiful, beautiful city. It is extremely expensive, though. She did say it is one of the most expensive cities in the world. And I believe it, because even like our little lunch, like a little simple lunch, was like, I think for my daughter and I, it was over $50 US dollars when I converted it out for lunch for 2 of us. And that was like, you know, like a pasta salad and a sandwich and some drinks. Like, it was really pricey. So we just stayed there for those couple of hours, and then we continued along our way to our hotel outside of Lucerne. And it was not like in the city center, it was kind of outside of it. And from our balconies, you could see the Alps. Oh, guys, Switzerland. If there is one country in all of Europe you should go see, it's Switzerland. The countryside it's the most beautiful countryside. I mean, rolling hills, animals everywhere, little farms, the cutest little houses, the mountains in the backdrop. I mean, one evening there was like an evening thunderstorm, like back over the Alps, and even just watching that, like watching the lightning and the storm clouds roll in, it's just beautiful. And the air is so fresh and so clean. And the hotel we stayed at was adorable. They had like the main building, and then you walked over to, they had a golf course on site and like this little kind of like golf clubhouse where the restaurant was. And our best dinner meals were served there. Our best dinner meals. They were amazing, different types of authentic, food from the area. Just, it was so good. It was so good. And the breakfast was amazing. In fact, that's my other tip. It doesn't matter what hotel you stay at. I swear, the breakfast options in Europe are absolutely incredible. And you should try all of the different things. Don't even worry about the calories. Don't, because you're going to walk them all off. So just eat all of the things. I mean, each place had amazing options. Every place we went, there'd be an option of different types of sliced meats, like prosciutto and things like that. A huge selection of cheeses, and you should try all the different ones because, again, they're amazing. There'd be fruit. There'd be things like sliced tomatoes and stuff like that for breakfast. Yogurts would be available, different types of like muesli, or it's kind of like a granola type cereal. In Switzerland and Germany, try it. It is so good. It is so good. In fact, I had remembered how much I liked it from when I was there back in high school. And I told my daughter, I said, you got to try this while you're here. And she loved it. And if I could find a way to get like the authentic stuff here at home now, I would eat it every day. But there would be hot stuff. There'd be, like scrambled eggs or eggs you could boil. In fact, our hotel in France even had a thing where you could lower in your egg and you could choose how long you wanted to boil it for. So if you wanted a 1 minute egg or 4 minute egg, you could like cook your eggs to different degrees. There would be crepes with different types of toppings and pastries. Oh my gosh, the pastries. Fresh croissants, fresh baked bread. There was brioche bread. There was... there'd be like chocolate filled, like puff pastries. There were these ones that were kind of like kind of like a nutty mix swirl bread. I mean, I ate a ton for breakfast every single day, and I'm not normally like a huge breakfast eater, but I mean, I just could not, I could not have it. So just enjoy the breakfast, guys. Try all of the things. Like I said, you'll walk it off. And if nothing else, you'll spend less money on lunch because you'll be so full from breakfast. And it's amazing. Just eat everything. So then we had a day where we went into Lucerne. And Lucerne is a beautiful, beautiful city. Again, it's filled with so much history. We went into this gorgeous old church with just these stunning displays. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And again, found out more about the history of the city and got to check out the architecture. There is this adorable wooden bridge, and I know it has a name and I will try to look it up, but this long wooden bridge that you can walk under, it's a covered bridge, and then just it had flowers like all over it. And the floral displays everywhere in Lucerne were just absolutely beautiful. I mean, there were columns filled with flowers. There were big flower things. I was a gardener, so of course, every time I saw pretty flowers, I was like, I gotta get a picture. We also saw this really cool stone carving of a lion, and I'm not going to get into the whole history of it, but just know that the Swiss Guard, everyone's probably heard of the Swiss Guard. They're, employed by the Vatican now, but they basically were kind of like mercenaries at a point where people could hire them, and they were known for their loyalty to whoever their patron was and their sense of duty. And at one time, there was a group of them who were defending the King of France during the Revolution. And there was a point where a whole group of them was killed, except for one man who was off on leave at the time. And so he commissioned this beautiful lion carving to commemorate his comrades who had been killed, basically, in action. And it was one of those things where it was beautiful to see. It was even more touching when you heard the story behind it and found out the history behind it. So we saw all of that while walking through Lucerne. We bought a whole bunch of Swiss chocolate, like a whole bunch. There was this really cool little chocolate shop that had truffles and different kinds of treats you could buy, and gelatos and macarons and just all kinds of things. Bought a lot of chocolate to bring home. And then we boarded a boat and we took an hour-long boat ride around the lake. It kind of stopped at different points along the way, but our destination was Mount Pilatus. Now, this was an optional excursion that was offered as part of our tour. And it actually wasn't one that we were originally going to go on. We had voted to do an excursion back in England to go to Windsor Castle, but it turns out that Windsor was closed the day we were going to be in London. So they were like, well, here's another one that we could do. And we said, okay, well, sure, we'd rather do an excursion than do nothing at all. And I'm so glad we did it. In fact, all of the girls said this was another highlight of the trip. So if you are in Switzerland and near Lucerne, do the tour of Mount Pilatus. So it's a huge mountain. It's about 7,000 feet up. And you get to the base of it. We went by boat. The boat ride itself was, again, gorgeous because the water's crystal clear, beautiful breeze, just kind of checking out all of the scenery. But we got there and then we got on like this cog rail train. So I guess a normal train can only go up, I think she said like 15 or 18 degrees, like as far as like how much of an angle it can be. And this one was like 48 degrees. And so this cog rail takes you all the way up to the top. And at the top, there is this huge, it's like a hotel and like this big like outdoor like kind of like pad you can go and sit on. There's a cafe, there's shops and all of that. It's almost like its own little mini mall on the top of the mountain. And from there are hiking trails, and we are super big as a troop on hiking. So we went on a hike and we went up to the top and looked out on everything. It was a very cloudy day, so we couldn't see super far, but I guess on clear days you can see for miles and miles and miles. But then we went on a trail that took us like down, kind of like through kind of like caverns and caves, and went around the back of the mountain. It was really cool to get to go and do that. We enjoyed the exploration of those areas, got some really neat pictures along the way. And then to go back down, they have like these cable cars that go down. I mean, it goes straight down. And if heights are not your thing, this probably wouldn't work for you because it's very high up. It's very high up. And the scenery, the scene was just, it was something else. Again, absolutely beautiful. And at times you pass over like these little farms, and you saw spots where there were like shepherds out there kind of herding their animals around. And there was a kind of like a stop about halfway down the mountain, and we could see that there was like a park and a restaurant and a high ropes course for kids. And then we kept going all the way down, and it took us back to Lucerne, and that's where we got off. But Mount Pilatus, definitely check it out. And it's another one of those things where there's a really cool legend to do with that mountain about a dragon. So you'll see dragon motifs everywhere, but it's actually named after Pontius Pilate. So if you go, you can find out a little bit about why it's called that and the history behind it as well. So after we left Switzerland, we continued on into Germany, and we stopped to see Neuschwanstein Castle. And this is the castle that Walt Disney actually visited and became the inspiration for the Cinderella Castle in Walt Disney World. And you can definitely see why. It is a stunning, stunning castle up on a hill. It was built by King Ludwig, and there's another palace nearby you can also tour. That was the one he grew up in. And then when he was older, he wanted to build this castle. Now, the castle itself is a little difficult to get to. It's about a mile hike, but it is very, very steep uphill walk to get up to it. I mean, it's a hike for sure. And I'm a pretty regular hiker, and I'm used to some long, hard hikes. So, I mean, I was able to do it without too much difficulty, but you could definitely feel it in your knees and your quads. But if you have any issues with mobility, or if anyone in your group has issues with mobility, they do have an option. There's like a bus ticket you can buy that will take you part of the way up, and then you have like a 15-minute walk the rest of the way. Or they have these like big like Clydesdale, pulled like carriages that again will take you most of the way up. Neither of those options take you all the way to the castle, but they'll take you to a point where it's a shorter walk the rest of the way. And you can take pictures outside the castle. You can also walk even further on beyond the castle to what's called the Marion Bridge. And I do highly recommend that. Again, that was a very crowded area because it's a big picture area. In fact, there was a really long line to get onto it. And that could be, again, the long line could be because we were there in the height of summer. You know, if you went when like the tourist season is a little bit lighter, you could probably not have to deal with so many crowds. But, you know, we were there in July, so it was crowded. But you walk out onto this bridge that's kind of over this big gorge, and there's a waterfall on your backside. And then when you turn around, there's the castle in its glory. It is just absolutely stunning. So it's worth it to go to get those pictures. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. You can take photographs on the outside of the castle, but you are not allowed to take any photos on the inside. They have books you can buy. I bought a book that has pictures of the inside, or they have like videos you can buy and they give a tour on the inside. The inside of the castle is so incredibly unique. I mean, he was called the Mad King, but there's just so much attention to detail inside this castle. I mean, for example, like the bed in the king's bedchamber took several woodcutters something like 5 years to finish. Because it's so intricately carved. There's a room that looks like a cave inside. There is a beautiful kind of like, like a garden room in there. The throne room. The throne room has just, I mean, a stunning attention to detail, beautiful mosaics, beautiful paintings, gold everywhere. I mean, every single room we went into, the attention to detail and the amount of things there were to see were incredible. It's on an audio tour, so you tell them the language you want, and you put on the little headset, and as you, or no, that one didn't have a headset. It had like a phone. So, but anyways, you told them what language it is, and it looked like a little phone, and it played information about it and then told you when to kind of move on to the next room. The only thing I wish is that we would have had more time in each room to get to look at more things. And there were certain rooms that were under construction or getting refurbished or having, you know, like just work done to preserve it. And so, you know, the tour changes over time. But absolutely stunning, totally worth doing, totally worth the hike to get up there and see it. But just an absolutely beautiful place to visit, and some of the most stunning pictures that we took. We went out on a balcony, and when you look out, you feel like a princess. You really do, because it's like your princess looking out over her kingdom. And you can understand why he wanted to build it on that ridiculously high mountain, because the view and the vista was just amazing. And you can almost imagine what it would have been like to kind of escape to that castle and just enjoy the beauty of the area around you. And then from there, we continued on into Munich, where we were going to be staying for the last portion of our trip. So our last day in Munich started off on a more sober note, because we took a trip out to Dachau, which is a concentration camp memorial. And I had been there before, and it was just as haunting and heartbreaking to see the second time as it was to see the first time. But I do feel like everyone should see one at some point. When you talk about the saying about people who don't, learn from history are doomed to repeat it. It's one of those places where you walk through and you can almost feel the heaviness of the place. You can feel like there are just souls not at peace there. And they've turned the main administrative building into a museum you can walk through, and it talks about the rise of Hitler and kind of how it is that all of this started. And then it talked about the types of prisoners that were brought to Dachau. Dachau was actually largely political prisoners, and it was not an extermination camp, or wasn't intended to be an extermination camp. People were actually put on trains and taken off-site for the most part. But still 41,000 people, I believe was the number, died there. And there was a documentary film that we sat and watched, about a 20-minute film, which explained more about it. And then you could walk through, now the barracks that used to be there were torn down, and they have rebuilt 2 of the barracks, but the foundations of all the rest are there. But they rebuilt them exactly like they were, so you could see what the conditions were like. The beds and the limited space, and you hear about the number of people who were crowded in there, and things like typhus went through and killed thousands of people. And you walk to the very back, and there were memorials set up. There was a Jewish memorial, a Catholic memorial, and then a Church of Reconciliation built in the back. And then the hardest part to walk through was the crematorium. So that's where like the shower rooms were, and the ovens were, which I think you can all guess what those were for. And then they had built a gas chamber there. They said that it actually never was used, but they were intending to start using it. And there's like a waiting room outside of it, and then this big heavy door. And they said that they would, they would tell people it was a shower. You were going in to take a shower. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying to walk into there. Even knowing, that it's not functional, you walk into there and you can't, you can imagine the fear people had. So not to get too depressing with this part of the vlog, but there's just no denying the heaviness of seeing something like that. It sits with you. And we got on the bus afterwards, and I was talking to one of the other chaperones later, and she said, "Did you notice how incredibly quiet it was on the bus after that?" And I think it's because it hit all of the girls, just what it was that happened there. And we had talked to them about it beforehand, kind of giving them some expectations on it. But I don't know. There's hearing about it and reading about it, and then there's seeing it firsthand. So in Munich, we took another bus tour, and I will say that this was probably one of the best bus tours that we had. We had a local teacher from there in Munich who boarded the bus, and he gave the most entertaining presentation as we traveled around the city checking things out. I mean, he provided so much information, but he did it with humor, and he made it engaging. He was constantly interacting with everybody on the bus. We got to see the site of the Olympics. We saw different palaces. We got a spot where we got to hop off and see a palace right there in Munich. We learned more about the fact that Munich is technically part of Bavaria, which is kind of like a state within Germany, has its own flag and everything like that. So we found out more about the history of Bavaria and where the people came from and how the culture spread and things like that. And it was very interesting to find out all of these things from someone, who lives there. I mean, he lives and breathes history. He teaches it. He said he teaches art history as well. So he had lots to share about different pieces of architecture that we were passing along the way. As always, I wish, we could have been able to stop more and take more photos, but the few spots where he did have us stop and get off and be able to take photos was really quite lovely. We went to kind of like a pedestrian city center in Munich. And what was really nice about this area is that there's very little traffic. Most of the area is simply pedestrian walkways. So you're not worried about cars and traffic. You can freely walk all around. Tons and tons and tons of stores and shops and things like that. That's where I went and bought my cuckoo clock and got that ordered. This is where the Glockenspiel is. So if you're in Munich, you should find out what time the Glockenspiel performance is. So it is a ginormous cuckoo clock, essentially. And when it goes off, it's like a whole 15-minute presentation, and there are all of these figures that come out and music and everything. And then, yes, the little cuckoo bird at the end. There is a cafe just across from the Glockenspiel. And so pro tip, if you go to that cafe, you actually go up several stories to have your drink and your treat that you purchase, and you can sit there and you can watch the Glockenspiel from a height. And it's one of the best views of it that you will have, but it's incredibly beautiful to see. Again, lots of little street performers as we were walking around. There's all these cute little kind of like alleyways you can go in. You can cut in and out between places. And there's a huge fresh market area. So if you wanted to buy, fresh fruits or vegetables and meats and chocolates and cheeses and all kinds of things, you could find it all there. Because of the way it's kind of set up with all of these little, like walkways and passages, and the fact that there was very little like car traffic, it was one of those things where it like there was a lot of people and it was very busy, but it didn't feel busy, if that makes sense. Like it felt relaxing to walk through there. Like I could walk through there for hours and not feel like overwhelmed by the number of people. In fact, it was one of my favorite afternoons, was just kind of strolling along through there. Went around and took a bunch of pictures, and we popped into all of these little random shops. Like we found a really cool yarn shop. My mom's a big knitter, so we found her some beautiful dyed wools and yarns that were made in Italy, and purchased those for her. We found some cool cheeses to bring home. I ordered my cuckoo clock and everything, and it was a really nice little place. We even went to the Lego store, there, and that was cool because they build all of these displays out of Legos, and they had all of these it was, it's Germany, so it had Lego cuckoo clocks and Lego structures. Like they had the Glockenspiel built out of Legos. They had little characters created, and the Alps and all of that, just some really beautiful displays made out of Legos there. So that was just kind of a fun little thing to do. But that little city center there in Munich was one of my favorite places to go and see. And then we went back to our hotel and called it a night. So I did want to throw in just a few more kind of tips and suggestions if you're traveling to Europe. If you were going to be in London Heathrow at all, whether that's there for a connecting flight or if that's your destination, it would be helpful to review kind of a map of the airport and kind of how it's set up. London Heathrow is enormous. It's multiple terminals, and they do have kind of like a tram system that goes between the terminals. So you go down several floors, either by elevator or by escalator, and they have trams that go between the terminals. If you're doing interconnecting flights, you do have to go through security again. So you kind of want to plan for time for that, because it was a very long wait through security at London Heathrow. Very long wait. It just took forever. And they were extremely thorough in checking to make sure that absolutely everything fit their requirements as far as bottle sizes and are all of your toiletries in one bag and things like that. Lots of people, it's just packed. And so, again, trying to keep track of everybody in our party was a little stressful just because of the number of people going back and forth through there. And it was a little hard to kind of navigate where things were going, because we had gotten off a flight and then we were trying to follow the signs to where interconnecting flights were. So it took us a tram over to one terminal, and then you go up, and then we went through security, and then you're in a terminal, but then we had to get back on the trams to go to a different terminal where a flight was. And that was a bit overwhelming, for sure. Just kind of not being sure where we needed to be and kind of how things were arranged. So just, it would be helpful to kind of prepare yourself for the busyness of that airport. With regards to hotels, most hotel rooms are going to be very small. When we had rooms that had 2 twin beds, they were pushed right up against each other, and the rooms were very tiny, and the bathrooms in general were very tiny as well. So not a lot of space in those. I mean, granted, you're not going to Europe to hang out in the hotel rooms, but just kind of be aware, especially if you've got a family, you might want to consider booking 2 hotel rooms or try to find like the largest one you can. Because even if it was like a room where it said it slept 3, it was 2 twin beds and then like a little fold out cot kind of deal. So, and they were all very close together. So there was not a whole lot of room to move around within the hotel rooms themselves. The one room that was a little bit larger was when we were in Munich. And when we walked in that one, there was actual space in the room. And we're like, we feel like we're walking into a palace because you can actually like spin around in the room and not hit anything. And the bathrooms were all kind of different. We had some that had like step-in tubs. We had ones in, where was the step-up one? Was it Switzerland? But it was like you stepped up into a shower and then it had like a half thing of glass and then the other half was open. That was a little interesting. Toilets, they all have like a push button on the wall. They have the number 1 button and the number 2 button there. So to help conserve water for those. And there's no ice machines like on the floors, like in the American hotels, you can go down the hallway and you can get bag ice. Can't do that. But if there's like a hotel, cafe, or restaurant, you typically can go down and you can ask for ice and they'll give you like a bag of ice or a cup of ice. So if you need ice for any reason, just kind of be aware you're going to have to go kind of hunt for it. Another tip would be to go ahead and get your phone activated for international use. Depending on what company you have, there's different types of plans and costs and things associated, but it was really nice to be able to text the members of our party back and forth, to be able to make calls if we needed to, and to be able to hop online on our phones on occasion, like if we needed to pull up a map to something or get a translation for something and things like that. So it was helpful to have those things. I also had a couple of apps downloaded. What is it called? Rick Stevens. He does a bunch of YouTube videos where he tours around the world. I had an app where he did like kind of like mini tours, like little audio tours of different things. So you could search for a site you were seeing and then you could listen to him tell you about the site. That was kind of nice on the periods of time when we had like free time to walk around, and I'd be like, oh, I wish I knew more about this. And I'd like look it up, listen to it. And get a little bit of history about it as well. So that was a nice little thing to have, and the app was free. So, can't beat that. I also suggest you make a list of those things that are you're not to be missed, the things that you really want to make sure that you get a chance to see. That way you can kind of plan out when you're going to be in a certain area, where all those things are, and you can make sure to, hit those different points and see them. And if you're planning things like a walking tour or a museum, give yourself more time than you think you will need, because there is a lot to see and a lot to explore, and you're going to want to be able to take your time and just kind of absorb it and really get to enjoy it. Also, give yourself some free time to explore these pedestrian friendly areas. Like I said, there was the marketplace area in Munich, which we spent hours at, and I could easily have spent hours more. When we were in London, about the Covent Gardens, again, like could have spent a ton of time there. The Louvre, could have spent hours there and still not seen even a fraction of it. So give yourself that time to really be able to explore those things. With regards to whether or not I would use a travel company again, I think it would depend on where I'm going and whether or not it was a family trip or a group trip. Again, the Explorica group that we used was absolutely amazing, very easy to work with. It made the cost really reasonable, and it was nice to not have to do all of that figuring out of things on my own. And our tour guide, Lou, she was amazing. I learned so much from her. The girls learned so much from her. I think I would love to do a tour again, even if we were going as a family, it might not be a bad thing to go with a tour again. One thing to bear in mind if you're going with a tour group is that things typically move at a pretty quick pace. Like if you're doing a walking tour, like you're walking, and you're going to see things, but then you're going to move on and you're going to go to the next thing. If you're getting dropped off somewhere, you're going to hop off and you're going to see it, and then you're going to hop back on and you're going to go to the next thing. They arranged the times for things. So, we had 3 days, I think 3 of our days, where we had to be like down in the hotel lobby at like 5:30 in the morning because we had early morning, train tickets or an early morning departure to get to the next stop, which makes it feel a little less like a vacation when, when you're setting your alarm for like a ridiculous hour of the morning in order to get up and around. So, I mean, there is that. Whereas, if it was like just a family vacation that we were planning ourselves, we could, kind of ease into it a little more. We could say, hey, I really like that thing. Let's spend a little more time there. It's just when you're going to countries where you don't know a lot about how everything works, going with a tour group kind of takes that load off of you of having to figure all of that out. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to it. Like I said, I would love to take my whole family, and do a trip. Not quite sure which countries we would visit, but it's on the wish list for sure. I would love to get them all over there. I'd love for my son to get a chance to see Europe. My husband's never been to Europe either. So I think it'd be really wonderful to be able to, be a part of their first time, an experience in Europe as well. But I would highly recommend it at least one point in your life to go and see it. There is so much just history behind everything, and so much of a deeper history than even what we have, here in the US. I mean, we're only a few hundred years old, and these guys are thousands of years old. They have so much behind each thing you see. There's so much meaning behind things, and so much to know about these different places. And they do such a remarkable job of preserving their history and just really honoring it. And there's some gorgeous places to see, and God has given us so many wonderful places to visit on this earth. And if I'm blessed enough to see, a fraction of them, then I will have lived a full life for sure. So I think that pretty much wraps up today's video. I know it was a long one, but there was just so much about this trip that I wanted to share with you guys. And I hope that by sharing information about the trip and some of the things I wish I had known before I went, that would help you, if you decide to plan a trip to Europe for yourself or your families in the future. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up before you go. Consider subscribing to my channel so you can be notified when I post new homeschooling and mom life content. Thanks again for watching today, guys. See you in the next video.